Part 143. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1421. Chapter 1421. Let's go to the movies together. His figure shines brightly in the midsummer sunshine. Xia Yingluo narrowed her eyes and looked at him. How did you get into my house? Gentleman Wei Lingnan smiled. My father-in-law opened the door for me. Xia Yingluo's forehead was throbbing with veins. She suspected that she had adopted a fake father. How could he be so kind to his wife but so mean to his daughter? First, don't call him father-in-law. Second, don't break into my house without permission. Third, I won't watch a movie with you, stay away from me. Her tone was cold. He was not affected at all and still held the flowers. Aloe, you look beautiful when you are angry. Xia Yingluo wondered if this man had masochistic tendencies. Couldn't he tell if he was driven away? He simply turned around and walked deeper into the villa. Wei Lingnan grabbed her and stuffed the white and fine flowers into her arms. The flowers I planted specially for you, do you like them? She was not caught off guard and hugged the bouquet of flowers into her arms. The fragrance of the flowers was intoxicating and refreshing. She wanted to throw the bouquet of flowers back at him, she wanted to be angry, but she couldn't say anything when she looked at his expectant face. She obviously wanted to warn him aggressively, but her words were gentle. Why are you doing these useless things? Why did you already do this to please me? His eyes flashed. I am willing to do anything for you. There was a rustle of wind in the atrium of the villa, and he stood one step away from her, looking at her affectionately. She felt a chill at his side and turned her head away. From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Li Lei passing by and shouted, Dad. Down the corridor, Li Lei paused, walked over and looked at his daughter with a smile. Yingluo, what's the matter? Xia Yingluo stuffed the large bouquet of bright white flowers into his arms. Don't let me deal with the trouble you caused. Li Lei turned sideways slightly and did not pick up the bouquet of flowers. He smiled innocently. What trouble? Isn't it a good thing that someone comes to date you? I just let him in. You can handle the rest by yourselves. Be good. As he spoke, he reached out and touched Xia Yingluo's soft long hair. Xia Yingluo thinks that this is really not her biological father, right? She wanted to say something else, but Li Lei had already turned around and looked at Wei Lingnan, with a cold tone. Treat my daughter well. If you dare to hurt her hair, you will make the entire Li family an enemy. Xia Yingluo couldn't bear to look directly at her. Dad, don't you think it's too late to say this now? Wei Lingnan was very humble, not at all ruthless and cruel as usual. Father-in-law, don't worry, I will treat Yingluo well. He is not your father-in-law. Xia Yingluo was angry. Wei Lingnan smiled slightly. Let's go and watch a movie. Let's discuss the title issue after watching this. Maybe I will consider changing my name before the next movie promotion announcement. Threat. This is the threat of Hongguokuo. Xia Yingluo was so angry that she could hear the implication of Wei Lingnan's words. If she didn't agree to his date, I'm afraid he would directly claim to be her future husband in the next publicity announcement. Dad, you don't care anymore. Xia Yingluo waited angrily for her father. Li Lei smiled and said, you guys are chatting, I suddenly remembered that I have something else to do, so I have to leave first. Xia Yingluo just wanted to poke some little straws out of him. She watched him leave bitterly and asked Wei Lingnan, what kind of ecstasy soup did you pour into him? Why was Li Lei so defensive about Wei Lingnan some time ago, and now? Are you so supportive of him? Wei Lingnan smiled. It's nothing. You also know how much my father-in-law loves my mother-in-law. The incident with Pei Xian last time made him very nervous. After I helped him solve it, of course he regarded me as one of his own. Really? Xia Yingluo looked at him suspiciously. Although it was logically reasonable, Li Lei's treatment of him was too tolerant. Wei Lingnan still smiled. Let's go and watch a movie with me. We haven't hung out together for a long time, of course. Her question was not that simple. It was him who asked about the lifespan of the people on the Scatana planet. In the future, she would leave the Earth, and told Lilei a series of things, so that Lilei knew that only he could be by her side forever. So, I got the permission. Of course, Wei Lingnan would not tell Xia Yingluo about these inside stories. Lilei wouldn't say it. He knew that Xia Yingluo didn't tell him her future plans because she was afraid that he would worry, so he just pretended that he didn't know. Seeing that Xia Yingluo was still a little suspicious, Wei Lingnan said very naturally, I have already booked movie tickets for Star Wars, Episode 2. It must be fun to watch the movie among a group of ordinary people. I also ordered Coke and popcorn. Xia Yingluo looked up at him, only this time. He smiled slightly, okay, just this once? Of course it's okay to go to the cinema to watch Star Wars, Episode 2 with her this time. In the future, they can go on dates elsewhere, go shopping in the mall and watch shooting stars. Haven't they been twice, 3 times, countless times? Wei Lingnan, who was in a good mood, took her hand and walked out. Xia Yingluo shook him off, I'll go by myself. He just smiled slightly and let her walk out of the villa with an unhappy face and got into his car. His black sports car is too eye-catching. Since he became a world-renowned new rich man, countless reporters have picked up his car, and countless paparazzi have followed him. He didn't want his rare date to be disturbed, so he drove a BMW that looked ordinary, but the interior decoration was very luxurious, comparable to the top luxury cars in the world. He took Xia Yingluo to a movie theater in the downtown area, put the car in the underground parking lot, got out of the cab, and opened the door for her in a very gentlemanly manner. Xia Yingluo took out her sunglasses and mask and tried to put them on, but he stopped her, no need. No need, she glanced at him. Now that they were both celebrities, being recognized by ordinary people would definitely cause a sensation of being rear-ended. No need, he said calmly, I use energy to distort our faces. In the eyes of others, we are just ordinary people with ordinary looks. Xia Yingluo understood that the Scatana people did have such an ability. Although their race seemed very primitive and relied on killing to expand, they did not have many precision instruments and high technologies. Perhaps energy technology was the top technology in the universe. Transforming all things into chaos, it can meet a variety of needs, ranging from destruction of the world to an inconspicuous disguise like this. But she still has to wear a mask, don't waste energy. He held her hand, it's rare to go out to play. Wearing sunglasses and a mask is so uncomfortable. We have received a lot of energy recently, why should we give it all to the world tree? It won't lack this energy when it is born. In the depths of her mind, the seeds of the world tree screamed, seeming to be angered by his words. Eat him, eat this treacherous traitor. There is another update in the evening. I have been visiting relatives and friends these days. I will resume the regular schedule after the Chinese New Year. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1422. Chapter 1422. His eyes. Shut up, Xia Yingluo scolded angrily in her heart, if you bother me again, I'll eat you first. You cannot do that, cannot dash. The screaming sound of the world tree was louder, but Xia Yingluo no longer paid attention to it. She looked up at Wei Lingnan and actually smiled, okay, just use energy. This was just because she was angry with World Tree, both of them wanted to be her master. She is not a puppet who can be manipulated by others. Even the World Tree, who is responsible for the future of the race, can't even think of bossing her around. Wei Lingnan couldn't hear her conversation with World Tree, but he was a little flattered when he saw her smiling at him. He carefully held her face and pressed a kiss on her smooth forehead. With this gentle kiss, a light white energy spread, and soon, the air against her face was slightly distorted. For a moment, From the perspective of ordinary humans, all they see is the face of an ordinary girl with average appearance. Only he, who was also a member of the Scatena tribe, could see her true appearance through the twisted air. Then, he stretched out his hand and wiped it on his face, repeating the same pattern. Xia Yingluo looked at him as if she had gone back to the eve of their battlefield many years ago. At that time, there were a lot of preparations, and he always handled everything in an orderly manner. Suddenly I felt a little lost. He locked the car door and turned his head to meet her gaze. "What are you looking at?" "Allo." She avoided her eyes and said covertly, "I'm just curious about what you have turned yourself into." "Do you want to see it?" he asked, raising his hand to wipe it on his face again. The Scatena people's disguise technique is divided into several levels. To deal with weak creatures like Earthlings, the lowest level is enough. But if he wanted to prevent even an advanced life form like her from seeing his true face, he would have to spend more energy on using more advanced disguise techniques. She grabbed his hand at once. "Don't. Even if she is angry with World Tree for being arrogant, she will not really waste too much energy. After all, it is not easy to collect." Wei Lingnan let her hold his hand in hers and smiled lightly. "Yeah." She wanted to let go of him, but he held her back. "Let's go and exchange tickets and get popcorn." "What is the life of ordinary humans like? I have never experienced it." She raised her head slightly. "Never experienced it? Since I came to this planet, I have been building bases and doing experiments. How can I have any leisure time?" Wei Lingnan replied nonchalantly. "Later on, you and I also experienced the life of rich people a lot, and did not live like ordinary people. Went shopping and watched a movie." She wanted to ask if she had never done this with Gu Jingxiu. This idea was dismissed as soon as it arose. That lady was also a wealthy young lady, and I'm afraid she couldn't bear the pain of being crowded with people in public spaces. She looked at his brows and eyes quietly, and there was a hint of childish joy in her usually indifferent face. This made her feel a little pain in her heart. How did he get here in these billions of years? Have you ever had a moment when you were truly relaxed? Unconsciously, she let him hold his hand and followed the crowd into the movie hall. Like an ordinary human man, he exchanged her ticket and brought her a drink and popcorn. Around them, there were countless couples doing the same thing. The girls smiled and said thank you to their boyfriends, and some acted coquettishly. This scene made Xia Yingluo feel a little unreal, as if, deep in her heart, the dream that had been buried for hundreds of millions of years was realized. "Allo." In a daze, she heard Wei Lingnan's voice. The man put his arm around her shoulders and helped her carefully avoid the crowds of people. "Walk slowly." She remembered that during a mission hundreds of millions of years ago, she went to the Red Sand Coast, a famous romantic city in the universe. There were also couples there. A young boy hugged his girlfriend and talked and laughed. Junk food in hand, face glowing with happiness. She stood on that shore for a long time. At that time, she was already very strong. With just a flick of her finger, everyone would bleed and die like grass. But she never took action. She was so envious of the ordinary young couple and wanted them to continue to be happy, even if they were happy where she couldn't see them. She failed to complete the task, spared the lives of an entire coastline, and went back to accept the punishment of the angry queen. No one understands how the invincible Princess Allo could fail. Only she knows why. When there is love in a person's heart, there is weakness. That's why those happy people are so weak. Now, she is being protected in Wei Lingnan's arms, and she seems to have become an insignificant member of the weak group. For some reason, she feels more solid and secure than when she was invincible in the world. Her eyesight turned dark, and it was he who led her into the screening room. Scatena's night vision is very good. He quickly found their seat and settled her down. There are all lovers in front, back and left, and Yan Yan laughs at the opening preface. After the opening ceremony, Everyone quickly became quiet and became fascinated by the plot of Star Wars Chronicles 2. Xia Yingluo also saw herself on the big screen for the first time. Her outstanding acting skills coupled with her fairy-like appearance were breathtakingly beautiful. But the person who is better than her is Wei Lingnan. He doesn't even need much acting skills. Just one movement and one look can make people's hearts beat and scream. Especially, the way he looked at her in the film. While filming, Xia Yingluo never noticed that he looked at her like that. Obsessed, cherished, with the pain of longing and unavailability, and with faint burning ambition and heat, just one pair of eyes has conveyed too many emotions. She didn't know how she saw the end of the show. The popcorn in his hand was not eaten at all, and his eyes were full of it. The lights in the cinema came on, and the young lovers on the left and right walked out one after another, talking as they walked. I didn't expect that Wei Lingnan is so good at acting. He can convey so many emotions with just one pair of eyes. When you see him, is Xia Yingluo looking like that? I won't believe her even if she says she doesn't love her. Affirmative love. That's right, no wonder we have to change the male lead. His acting skills alone make him a lot better than Zhang Yu in the first film. What about acting skills? Zhang Yu is a great actor, but his acting skills are poor? I think Wei Lingnan really likes Xia Yingluo, so he can make that look in his eyes. Let's show his true colors. As for Zhang Yu, I guess he is acting. How can anyone really do that? Is your heart so brilliant? That makes sense. The discussion gradually faded away. Wei Lingnan lowered his head and glanced at Xia Yingluo, who was standing there. Let's go. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1423. Chapter 1423, Go to Wei Lingnan. She followed him outside, and there was a huge flow of people leaving the venue. Outside the cinema is a bustling commercial street. The bright lights and the stars in the night sky complement each other, making it as beautiful as a dream. A gust of night wind blew, and Wei Lingnan asked her, "Is it cold?" She shook her head subconsciously and heard him ask again, "Why haven't you eaten any popcorn?" At this moment, she realized that she was still holding popcorn in her hand, which was piled up like a mountain. When she was watching the movie, she just stared into his eyes and was so distracted that she had no time to eat popcorn. "I feel a little uncomfortable and don't really want to eat," she hurriedly made an excuse and handed the popcorn in front of him. "Do you want it?" Uncomfortable. It's probably because there was a lack of oxygen in the cinema just now, therefore, telling a lie always requires more lies to cover it up. Xia Yingluo didn't want him to continue asking, so she said, "If you don't want to eat, I'll find a plastic bag to put it in, don't waste it." Although she is a rich young lady, she is well educated. Don't waste food is the family motto. Wei Lingnan looked at her, lowered his head, took one popcorn from the mountain of popcorn with her hand, and chewed it slowly. His posture is calm and elegant, and his long shadow is dragged by the neon lights on the busy street, like a top ferocious beast accepting food from its owner. After a moment, he raised his head and stared at her unblinkingly, his eyes shining like stars in the night sky. Her face suddenly turned red. He chuckled, hugged her into his arms, and kissed her regardless of her slight struggle. With a slightly overbearing but gentle kiss. Just on this street, in this starry night, they were enjoying this beautiful and peaceful moment like so many ordinary couples on the earth. One of his hands was holding her waist, and the other hand was intertwined with her fingers, as if telling a vow to never separate. The streets were busy with traffic at night. On the overpass not far away, a woman stared hatefully at the two people kissing. Gu Jingxia was wearing inconspicuous clothes, with half of her body hidden in the shadow of the fence beside the bridge. She gritted her teeth and muttered to herself, "Xia Yingluo, why can you be with Nan? He is mine. He is mine." Although in the eyes of ordinary humans, Xia Yingluo and Wei Lingnan, who had used energy to disguise themselves, were just two ordinary people, in the eyes of Gu Jingxiu, who also had the blood of the Scatana clan, they could easily see through their true colors. She had followed Wei Lingnan here today. She missed him so much that she was willing to take another look at him, but she didn't expect to see him and Xia Yingluo kissing in the street. Gu Jingxiu wanted to rush forward immediately and tear Xia Yingluo to pieces, but she couldn't. If she really did that, not only would she not be able to hurt a hair on Xia Yingluo's body, but she would probably be torn to pieces by Wei Lingnan. Not reconciled, so unwilling. Gu Jingxiu's fingers with bright red nail polish dug into the railing tightly, wishing to dig a hole in the railing of the pedestrian bridge. She wanted revenge, and she would never let that named Xia Yingluo have it easy. Even if she can't confront Xia Yingluo head-on, she will definitely find a way. The solution was quickly found. In other words, a woman's jealousy has reached a terrible level. She remembered that Xia Yingluo had a good friend named Jin Ling-er. The girl named Jin Ling-er was an ordinary human being. If Jin Ling-er was injured or even died, Xia Yingluo would definitely look very sad, right? "I don't have any intention of dating Wei Lingnan anymore. Then she can take advantage of the situation and make a comeback." A vicious smile appeared on Gu Jingxiu's delicately made-up face. She followed Jin Ling-er for several days, lurking among the bustling crowds on a bustling street. She activated her energy while Jin Ling-er was crossing the road, and a truck suddenly rushed towards Jin Ling-er out of control, screams and cries. Sound, harsh brake sound. The news reported this major traffic accident, which resulted in 2 deaths, 1 serious injury, and 4 or 5 minor injuries. It was both lucky and unfortunate that the actress Jin Ling-er, who had only debuted for less than a year, became the one who was seriously injured. Xia Yingluo's voice was trembling when she received the news. "How is Ling-er doing now? Why did she get into a traffic accident just fine?" It was her agent Tan Ying who brought the news, who responded in an orderly manner, "Ms. Jin is still in the intensive care unit and is not out of danger." Du Zheng heard the news and rushed over to accompany her. As for the driver responsible for the accident, it was found that he was driving under the influence and he was arrested. Drunk driving? Those people who drink and drive without regard for their own lives and the lives of others. Xia Yingluo didn't have time to get angry and hurriedly walked out. "Get the car ready, I'll go to the hospital to see her. And tell Wei Lingnan quickly and let him go and have a look." In this world, the most advanced medical technology is undoubtedly in Wei's. Of course he has to take action at this kind of moment. Tan Ying also knew that Wei's technology was advanced, so he agreed and went to work. Xia Yingluo arrived at the hospital, and Jin Ling-er was still lying in the intensive care unit. Through a thick sealed glass window, Du Zheng stood in the corridor, wearing a crisp suit and leather shoes, rushing from unknown venue. "Come on, his face is so cold that it looks like water is dripping from his face." Xia Yingluo stepped forward and asked, "Brother Du Zheng, how is Ling-er?" Seeing that it was her, Du Zheng said coldly, "We're not out of danger yet. I asked the hospital to save her at all costs. Now that the operation is done, the doctor said it's up to her whether she can survive." As he said this, he had a look of forbearing worry. Xia Yingluo was also worried and wanted to comfort him. "Don't worry, Ling-er will definitely be a good person. It seems that she can't convince herself." She raised her wrist and looked at the exquisite women's watch. She took out her mobile phone and called Wei Lingnan. "Where are you and how long until you arrive? Hurry up." As soon as she finished speaking, a person appeared at the end of the corridor, holding a mobile phone in one hand, and a clean voice came, "I'm here, Allo, don't be afraid." He walked towards her step by step, as if the savior had descended from the sky. She was happy, and for the first time in a while she sincerely welcomed his appearance, Wei Lingnan. He looked down at her. "Allo, I'm here." On the way here, he had already roughly understood the cause and effect of the matter. He comforted Xia Yingluo and then turned to look at Du Zhang. "I want to go into the ward and take a look." Du Zhang glanced at Xia Yingluo doubtfully. "Yingluo, is he okay?" Xia Yingluo said, "The technology over there in Wei Lingnan is very advanced, even better than the hospital. And brother Du Zhang, even if you don't believe him, you should believe me. I won't harm Ling. Du Zhang then nodded and asked his assistant to negotiate with the hospital and let Wei Lingnan go in. Wei Lingnan walked into the room wearing a full set of sterile protective clothing and bent down to look at the hospital bed. There is another update in the evening. Relatives are coming to play, so it may be late, before 12 o'clock. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 1424. Chapter 1424. I am her husband. The girl's face is pale and her breath is weak. Wei Lingnan used a ray of energy to investigate and found that her internal organs were broken in many places, and there was a possibility of complete collapse at any time. He stood up and walked out of the intensive care unit. Xia Yingluo and Du Zheng gathered around him anxiously and asked, "How is the situation?" Wei Lingnan shook his head. "Where is the attending doctor? I want to see him." Time was urgent, and the two of them didn't bother to ask any more questions. Under the leadership of Du Zheng, they quickly arrived at the attending doctor's office. Wei Lingnan took out a small bottle of light blue medicine from his pocket and handed it to the attending doctor. "Take this, dilute it and give Jin Ling an intravenous drip." The attending doctor frowned and looked at him. "Sir, please don't hinder the treatment. If something happens to the patient." "I am Wei Lingnan." He looked at the attending doctor with cold, emotionless eyes. The attending doctor was slightly stunned, and the nurse on the side had already called out, "Wei Lingnan? Isn't he the superhero who developed the new anti-cancer drug? This is one of the best hospitals in the city, with the best doctors in it." Nurses are old and busy at work, so they are not as starstruck as young people. When they heard the words Wei Lingnan, their first reaction was not the recent popular movie, but the earlier new anti-cancer drug. This was the big topic that caused a stir in the medical community. Wei Lingnan nodded. "It's me." He quietly took a few steps forward, covering Xia Yingluo behind him intentionally or unintentionally. Although Xia Yingluo had already put on a mask and sunglasses obediently before coming in, and theoretically she wouldn't be recognized, he didn't want to cause trouble for her. The attending doctor also reacted at this time and said excitedly, "Are you really Mr. Wei Lingnan Wei? It's such an honor to meet you. Can you tell me in detail about the new anti-cancer drug? Such a wonderful principle, I have never seen it before." Wei Lingnan's voice was still cold. "We are going to treat Jin Ling now." The attending doctor finally came to his senses. The fanatical look on his face faded, and he returned to his usual serious and responsible attitude towards the patient. When talking about his critically ill patient, he was meticulous. "I'm sorry, sir, I just lost my temper. But you can't prove that you are really Mr. Wei Lingnan. The origin of this bottle of medicine is unknown, and I can't give it to the patient get in for drip." It was Du Zheng who spoke this time. "Dr. Huang, if you don't believe me, you can search online. It's easy to find photos of Mr. Wei. No one will spend a lot of time on plastic surgery to deceive you, right?" With these words, Xia Yingluo couldn't help but glance at him. This man is really someone worthy of Ling's entrustment for the rest of his life. He analyzed the pros and cons so quickly, analyzed the problem calmly in such an urgent situation, and put forward practical arguments to the doctor. The doctor patted his head. "Look at me, why didn't you think of it? I actually opened the computer in the office in front of everyone and searched for Wei Lingnan's photo. I compared the two and confirmed that it was him. The attending doctor hurriedly stood up and apologized to Wei Lingnan. "Mr. Wei, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have doubted you." Wei Lingnan was a little impatient. "You still haven't given Jin Ling medicine." The attending doctor said in embarrassment, "But even if it is your medicine, I cannot use it directly on Miss Jin without the permission of the hospital. This is against the procedure. I cannot bear the responsibility if something goes wrong." Wei Lingnan, he narrowed his eyes dangerously, with a faint murderous intent spreading. The attending doctor was so trembling at the sight of him that he took a few steps back unconsciously. Xia Yingluo saw Wei Lingnan's eyes slowly condensing. This was a precursor to the Scatena people using their energy to brainwash people. She couldn't help but interrupt, "Dr. Huang, take the medicine first. If anything happens, I'll be there." Remembering that she was covered face, she changed her words, "Mr. Wei will take full responsibility. In addition, we will do the hospital work, and we will not let you take the responsibility." She didn't want Wei Lingnan to use his energy if there were any other ways. This kind of energy consumption to control people's thoughts is very large, hundreds of times more than the little disguise technique they used last time. In addition, there are Du Zheng and several nurses at the scene. After it is done, they must dispel their doubts and say brainwashing and memory reconstruction may also be required, which is a major energy-consuming project. She still remembered how he seemed to be weak due to lack of energy when filming Star Wars Chronicles 2, and she didn't want him to be in danger again. Wei Lingnan heard her words, glanced at her, put away his aggressive eyes, and said to the attending doctor in a different tone, "Yes, I take full responsibility. I will ask someone to go through the procedures later. These drugs are treated as experimental drugs. Don't hospitals often recruit volunteers for experimental drugs? Just treat Jin Linger as a volunteer." The attending doctor was still very embarrassed. "Mr. Wei, it's not that I'm making things difficult for you, it's really, well, those experimental new drugs require volunteers, but volunteers are all voluntary. In Miss Jin's situation, her own life, she is in critical condition and is unconscious. She must get the signature of her family members. Are her family members here?" Xia Yingluo frowned slightly. Jin Linger's parents were not in the city, how could they get over in such a short time? Just when she was about to say something, Du Zheng, who was standing aside, said, "I'll sign. I'm her husband." Xia Yingluo was startled. Even Wei Lingnan glanced at Du Zheng without realizing it. When did this man marry Jin Linger? It was so quiet, no one knew. But when they thought about it again, they understood that the marriage between the two was probably fake, and that Du Zheng was acting in a hurry and wanted to pretend to be Jin Linger's husband and settle the matter first. They had a tacit understanding not to expose Du Zheng. The attending doctor glanced at Du Zheng without much suspicion. After all, Du Zheng was the first one to come after Jin Linger's car accident. His distress and worry were palpable, and he could tell that they were closely related. He thought that if the original treatment plan was followed, the girl in the hospital bed would have a death rate of over 95%, so it would be better to use the dead horse as a living doctor and let Wei Lingnan try new drugs. With Wei's ability to develop anti-cancer drugs, maybe there is hope? Okay, he made up his mind and told the nurse beside him, "Give this bottle of medicine to Miss Jin." The nurse went as she was told. Wei Lingnan sent his senior staff in the base to handle the procedures for the new drug, and he accompanied Xia Yingluo and Du Zheng to guard outside the ward. Xia Yingluo looked at the golden bell behind the glass window and watched the nurse hanging up the bottle of diluted blue medicine, her heart still full of worry. She asked Wei Lingnan, "What medicine did you give her? Can it save her?" End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1425. Chapter 1425, Pretending to be a couple. Wei Lingnan told her, "This is a universal life-saving medicine. After receiving the call from Tan Ying, I guessed that it would be used, so I brought a bottle directly. Xia Yingluo nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work." He smiled slightly, "It's nothing hard, Aluo. It's my honor to work for you." Jin Linger's condition will be stable, but she was injured too seriously. She needs to rest and take good care of her in the next few days. The last sentence was addressed to Du Zheng. Du Zheng replied briefly, "I will take good care of her, thank you." Several people stayed outside the ward for a long time. In the evening, the attending doctor announced that Jin Linger's condition was stable, and they breathed a sigh of relief. As soon as the tense nerves relaxed, Xia Yingluo felt a little tired. Wei Lingnan sent her home and said good night. She turned around and walked back to her villa. After walking a few steps, Wei Lingnan called her, "Aluo." She turned around and looked at him with some confusion. He also looked at her, his eyes as gentle as water under the night sky. She asked him, "What's the matter?" He smiled, "It's okay, it's just. I just miss you a little. Before we were separated, I started to miss you." He was not a person who said too many lovely words, so he only told her, "Come into the house." She glanced at him inexplicably, then turned and entered her home. Wei Lingnan had been standing outside the exquisite fence of the villa, watching her back. He didn't drive away until her back disappeared inside the gate and the lights came on in her room on the second floor. Jin Linger is recovering from her injuries in the hospital. She woke up on the second day after receiving Wei Lingnan medicine treatment, but the doctor said that her physical condition was still very weak and she would need to be hospitalized for a long time. Du Zheng stayed with her and asked her, "What was the situation like at that time? Tell me about it." Jin Linger knew that he cared about her, and while recalling the scene of the car accident, she said, "I was walking on the road without incident, and the crosswalk was a green light. Suddenly a car lost control and rushed out, and everyone around me was screaming. It was called, I turned around and saw it, and I wanted to avoid it, but its speed was too fast." At this point, Jin Linger suddenly stopped for a moment. "It's strange, there were so many cars on the street at that time, all driving very slowly. Why is that car so fast?" Du Zheng's brows jumped. "How fast?" 80, 100, at least 100 miles, Jin Linger said firmly, and was immediately surprised by her own judgment. "Mr. Du, there is a speed limit section over there, and it is an intersection. The cars are stopped waiting for the red light. How did that car run? Damn it!" Du Zheng also thought this was ridiculous. Even if the driver wanted to drive at such a high speed, there must be enough distance for him to drive, but obviously such conditions were not available on that street. "I'll look into it," he said. Although the police have classified this matter as drunk driving, it concerns Jin Linger, and he will not give up until he finds out for himself. Jin Linger was very moved, but also a little nervous, and said cautiously, "Mr. Du, thank you, have I caused any trouble for you?" Du Zheng glanced at her, "Call my name." "Huh," she was stunned. "My name is Du Zheng." She looked at his calm face and suddenly felt her cheeks turning red. Did she hear it correctly? He actually asked her to call him by his name. She had worked hard to chase him for so long before, but she didn't get this treatment. Now he suddenly changed his temper? The joy fell from the sky, and Jin Linger didn't let the doubtful thoughts linger in her mind for too long, and shouted happily, "Du Zheng." Fearing that he would regret it, he shouted several times in a row, "Du Zheng, Du Zheng." Du Zheng's usually expressionless face also had a hint of softness that was imperceptible. Jin Linger laughed and fussed for a while before asking, "Why did you suddenly ask me to call your name?" After saying that, she looked at him expectantly. Du Zheng looked at the hospital bed. Her facial features are not very outstanding, not to mention that they are not as beautiful as Xia Yingluo's, but they are still a little bit behind the natural beauty of ordinary rich and powerful daughters. But the way she smiled was so moving, which attracted him deeply, as if there was no one in the world whose smile was prettier than hers, which made him after her. Du Zheng, Jin Linger stretched out her hand and waved it in front of his eyes. Why are you so dazed? He then came back to his senses and remembered the question she had just asked. Ask him why he suddenly asked her to call him by name. Because, the moment he heard that she had been in a car accident, his heart almost stopped beating. Looking at her lifeless face through the glass of the intensive care unit, his heart was filled with endless regret. Why couldn't he protect her properly and put her in such danger? If she was with him, he would definitely push her away with all his strength the moment the car hit her. It was only then that he realized that this girl was indispensable in his life. He could not forget her bright and cheerful smile, the way she wanted to approach him but was cautious, and the few moments between the two of them. Her beauty when we were alone together for the first time. He had not yet held her hand, or even heard her name being called in a sweet voice. Could it be that their fate would only end at this moment, this car accident? Du Zheng silently made a decision in his heart. As long as she wakes up, he will not push her away this time. The girl's smile was like a flower, and she asked him reluctantly, "Tell me, why did you suddenly change my words?" However, these thousands of reasons made him feel numb. He just turned his head slightly and said, "Tell Mr. Du to stay away from me. I will use new medicine when you are seriously ill. I signed it by pretending to be your husband. Don't cheat." She was stunned, and her face turned red again. What did he say, pretending to be her husband? Seeing her lowering her head and saying nothing, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. Ms. Jin, the situation was urgent at that time. I didn't mean to dash. What? She suddenly raised her head, interrupted him, and smiled sweetly. Thank you for taking on this responsibility for me. Without you, my life might not have been saved. How unfamiliar is it to call me Miss Jin? In order not to betray anyone, please call me Linger from now on. Du Zheng looked at her, countless words of explanation stuck in his throat. She smiled again and stretched out her hand, waving it in front of his eyes. What's wrong? Are you so moved? From today on, we will pretend to be a couple until I am discharged from the hospital. Du Zheng, do you mind? Of course I don't mind. He shook his head reflexively. So she laughed again. After laughing for a while, she suddenly realized that she was not shy and she secretly lowered her head. The corners of his lips, however, could not be concealed from rising slightly. My relatives are inviting me to dinner today, and there will be another update, so it will be very late. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1426. Chapter 1426. It turns out to be Yingluo. Perhaps to make his identity look more realistic, Du Zheng comes to accompany her every day, feeds her water and food, and pushes her out to bask in the sun when the weather is nice. She was just a little star, and few people would recognize her when she wore a mask and sunglasses. However, Du Zheng often pushed her to walk in the garden downstairs of the hospital. The gentleness hidden in the corners of his eyes and brows was enviable. When they are more envious, some good people will quietly pay attention to their identities. I often hear other patients and family members whispering, "Who is that girl in the wheelchair wearing a mask? I heard that the person pushing her is her husband. She is very handsome, so loving." There were more people asking, and the young nurses accidentally revealed the news while chatting. I didn't expect that Mr. Du's vision was so high. According to legend, Ningguo, the golden bachelor who had been in love for many years, actually married a little star without saying a word. Little star. The people's gossip fire was boiling, and they all asked who the little star, the girl wearing the mask, was. When they inquired carefully, the truth soon came to light. Jin Ling-er secretly married Du Zheng, the president of Du's company. Jin Ling-er was hospitalized for treatment in a car accident, and Du Zheng accompanied her affectionately. The sparrow flies up the branch and turns into a phoenix. Sensational headlines quickly appeared in the news. Not only the patients and their families in the hospital, but also the entire entertainment industry and celebrity gossip world exploded. Rumors spread overnight, and people speculated about the inside story. Many reporters even called their assistants and managers, asking them to explain the details. The situation is getting worse and worse. Xia Yingluo took the time to watch the news while rushing to make announcements, and smiled at Wei Lingnan, who was in the same car. Look at the trouble you caused, how much gossip brother Du Zheng took on for that signature, it's really exciting now. Wei Lingnan looked at his beloved girl with sparkling eyes. I am helping them, otherwise with how hard-working those two people are, when will they be able to see their own hearts clearly? Xia Yingluo smiled again. Okay, you will be useful this time. She was in a good mood, reading the news again and humming. Wei Lingnan looked at her delicate profile and wanted to reach out and touch her soft long hair. He moved his fingers, but he did not dare to blaspheme. He was already very annoying to her, and the relationship had finally eased a bit, but he didn't want it to be ruined again because of his impulsiveness. Xia Yingluo hummed to herself for a while and suddenly said, Brother Du Zheng's family must also be in trouble, right? With his status, marrying an ordinary girl quietly is definitely a big earthquake, and he must be very angry. Well, Wei Lingnan said lightly, not everyone is like me and doesn't have family burdens. Xia Yingluo glared at him angrily, but she didn't even notice that there was a slight smile in the corners of her eyes and eyebrows. She held her chin and thought for a while, I should go see Ling-er sometime. It's not easy for her and brother Du Zheng to be together. No matter what, I have to protect their marriage. Wei Lingnan said, you haven't even taken care of your own affairs. Xia Yingluo said smoothly, World Tree? It has collected a lot of energy recently. Although it cannot be made very strong, it cannot be starved to death for the time being. That guy is very annoying. It's better to stay in this half-dead state. I don't want to let it be born on the earth, it will harm mankind. Ignoring the screams of the World Tree in her mind, she smiled brightly, don't you think so? Yes, Wei Lingnan was dazzled by her smile. Just say it without thinking. So she laughed again and stretched a little, I'm exhausted. Let's take a day off tomorrow. I'll go to the hospital to see Ling-er. The next day, she actually ordered a bouquet of flowers from Sean Kong flower shop in Willingnan and went to the hospital to visit Jin Ling-er. Step by step along the long corridor, I walked to the door of the VIP single ward. Just as I was about to knock on the door, I heard a sharp curse coming from inside. Jin Ling-er, what do you think you are? You are imitating others at a young age. Do you want to marry into a wealthy family just by relying on this trick? I tell you, I will never let you get it if you have me, Shen Yuqian. Don't think that just making a few fake news is enough to marry me. Son, unless you step over my body, then there was a series of bitch and slut. Xia Yingluo's face darkened when she heard this, and she recognized that this was Du Zheng's mother. Just listen to Jin Ling-er in the ward, holding back her grievance and replying, Aunt Chen, you misunderstood. Du Zheng really pretended to be my husband just to help me sign the hospital certificate. How could I marry into a wealthy family through this method, woolen cloth? Shen Yuqian sneered, a Zheng took the initiative to sign for you. Are you talking nonsense? I don't know about my own son yet. He won't care about such nosy things. It must be you, a vixen, who seduced him, shameless. Aunt Chen, Jin Ling-er was aggrieved by the vixen she called her, and she became angry and shouted, I respect you as Du Zheng's mother, and being polite to you does not mean that I am your wrong. I'm not a vixen at all. You have a clear conscience, Shen Yuqian was about to get angry and sneered, if you really have a clear conscience, do you dare to swear in front of me that you don't like Du Zheng at all? You will never have anything to do with him in this life, let alone don't you want to marry him? Jin Linger fell silent. It was one thing for her not to deliberately seduce Du Zheng, but it was another matter whether she liked Du Zheng or not. She liked him so much and had the dream of marrying him. How could she be willing to swear casually under Shen Yuqiang's coercion? Are you guilty? Shen Yuqiang seemed to have seen through everything a long time ago. I have seen too many young and poor girls like you. Aren't all of them just greedy for our family's money? Is 5 million enough? Give it to me. Go as far as you can, go away. Aunt Chen, Jin Linger was really angry, her voice was trembling, you can't insult people like this. Xia Yingluo couldn't listen anymore and pushed open the door of the ward. The two women in the ward stopped arguing and turned to look at her in unison. Yingluo, it was Jin Linger who spoke first, why are you here? He didn't want her to see her embarrassment, so she smiled awkwardly, what a coincidence, come sit here, me and this I'm chatting with Auntie Sheng. Xia Yingluo and Shen Yuqian were old acquaintances. At this time, Xia Yingluo called out coldly, Aunt Sheng. When Shen Yuqian saw her, she felt a little embarrassed. She didn't know if she heard what she just insulted Jin Linger. Forcing a smile, Shen Yuqian said to Xia Yingluo, it's Yingluo. Why are you here too? End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1427. Chapter 1427. She is pretty good. In front of Xia Yingluo, even if she is a wealthy lady, she would not dare to be presumptuous. Even wealthy families are divided into 3, 6, or 9 levels. There is no doubt that the Li family is one of the top wealthy families. Not to mention the mysterious Xia family, who can make people live and die with just one thought. They are a being that no matter how powerful the power is, they dare not provoke them. Shen Yuqian greeted Xia Yingluo enthusiastically, took her hand, and said with a smile, good boy, come here and let Auntie see, why have you lost weight? Is it very hard to film during this time? Auntie bought something a few days ago. These golden blood swallows are rare and high quality goods. I will ask our Zheng to pack some and send them to you later. Looking at your appearance, my aunt feels distressed. She said a series of words with a smile and anger. Her attitude was completely different from when she had just faced Jin Linger. Jin Linger looked at Shen Yuqiang's excellent performance in both singing and composition, and felt aggrieved and sad. She had long heard people say that rich families are not easy to mix with, and ordinary girls like her were not taken seriously by others at all. But I heard that she was the thing is, when I really face the situation, I am still sad. This Aunt Sheng likes Yingluo very much, right? The look of holding Yingluo on the tip of her heart and cherishing her, as if she wished she could be his daughter-in-law. Jin Linger was startled by her sudden thought, and couldn't help but look at the two people who were still pulling each other. Xia Yingluo caught a glimpse of her eyes, and calmly took her hand out of Shen Yuqiang's hand, and responded with a well-bred smile, thank you Aunt Sheng, Linger happened to be sick, and I didn't have time to prepare in a hurry. What, this is a good time, I can borrow flowers to offer to the Buddha, and divide the blood swallows you sent so that she can replenish herself. Shen Yuqiang's face suddenly turned ugly. Those golden blood swallows were found by her with great difficulty. They are the best products for beauty and beauty. If it weren't for Xia Yingluo's high status, she wouldn't be willing to give it to Xia Yingluo. But Xia Yingluo actually wants to transfer it to this little bitch. How does this little deserve to be treated? Shen Yuqian gritted her teeth with hatred and blurted out, no. The smile on Xia Yingluo's face faded, Aunt Sheng is trying to hurt me. Shen Yuqian realized that she had made a mistake. How could she treat the daughter of the Li family with such an attitude? He quickly put on a smile and said, Auntie, that's not what you mean, Yingluo. What I mean is that the golden blood swallow is so precious, so of course it should be reserved for your own use. The amount is not much in the first place, how can it be enough if you divide it out? Auntie feels sorry for you and is afraid that you won't be able to keep up with your nutrition. Xia Yingluo smiled half-heartedly, are you saying that my parents can't afford me food? No. That's not what I meant. This child, oh, Shen Yuqian said quickly, who doesn't know that your family has everything? Your parents dote on you so much, how could they wrong you? This is the aunt's intention, by the way, a Zheng often says, if there is anything good, remember to give it to you, he always cares about you. Shen Yuqian calmly brought the topic to her son. Over the years, she has been anxious about Du Zheng's marriage. Looking over and over, she felt that the only person who could match him was the noble and distinguished daughter of the Li family. If Du Zheng could marry her, how much help would it bring to his career? Therefore, she has been hinting Du Zheng Duoduo and Yingluo in secret, but it is a pity that her son is a piece of wood, as if he does not understand, and only treats Xia Yingluo as a sister. Shen Yuqian was so anxious that she had no choice but to seize every opportunity to arrange the match herself. But even Xia Yingluo didn't seem to understand her hint. She tilted her head slightly and smiled sweetly, well, thank you auntie and brother Du Zheng for your concern. Brother Du Zheng is really nice. Last time we met he also asked me to take care of Ling for him. If you tell me, he is really too nervous. Ling is my good friend, who would bully her? Aunt Chen, don't you think so? Shen Yuqian's smile froze again. She secretly hated her son for failing to live up to his expectations and not pursuing such a noble girl as Xia Yingluo. She even asked him to take care of a straw. She couldn't help but glared at Jin Linger angrily, bah, what a broom star. Xia Yingluo kept watching her every move. When she saw her glaring at Jin Linger so viciously, her eyes wandered, and she walked over to Jin Linger's bed and sat down. She held Jin Linger's hand and whispered softly, as for you, just take good care of yourself and go to my house to play when you feel better. My parents have been talking about you and often praise you for being smarter than me. I like it. Is you? Jin Linger knew that she was trying to support herself, her nose felt a little sore, and she nodded heavily, yeah. Xia Yingluo added, when you get better, bring brother Du Zheng with you and talk to my parents. Jin Linger nodded heavily again, yes. Shen Yuqian on the side looked gloomy and uncertain when she saw this scene. Although she was snobbish, she was not completely blind to the situation. The scene in front of her was clearly that Xia Yingluo wanted to support Jin Linger. She most likely guessed that the words she just insulted Jin Linger were heard by Xia Yingluo. It's gone. It's true that Xia Yingluo pretended to be deaf and dumb to the olive branch extended by the Du family, and she also wanted to marry this impoverished broom star into the Du family. For a while, Shen Yuqian became dissatisfied. Xia Yingluo turned her head, smiled and said to Shen Yuqian, then it's settled, Aunt Chen, when Ling recovers from her illness, I want brother Du Zheng to come to my house with her to play. Before Shen Yuqian could refuse, Xia Yingluo didn't have time to wait for Shen Yuqian to refuse. He added, Tianyi has been too busy with things recently. My dad and eldest brother have been thinking about finding a partner. Shen Yuqian swallowed the words of rejection that came to her lips. Isn't she working so hard just to make her son's career more brilliant? Although Du Zheng said he was a good friend with Li Shaowai rarely took him to his home. The two of them were busy with their work. In total, it had been a long time since Du Zheng had visited Li's house in a private capacity. Shen Yuqian understands this truth. Forget it, although this little cheap person named Jin Linger is poor, he seems to have a good relationship with Xia Yingluo. It would be good to let Du Zheng and the Li family move around more first. As for marriage? Still, no way. With this thought in mind, Shen Yuqian smiled at Xia Yingluo and said, okay, Zheng misses your parents very much too. The three of them had nothing to say anymore. Shen Yuqiang said goodbye and left the ward. Jin Linger on the side finally got out of the movie watching mode, took a deep breath and said, "Oh my god, I'm so frustrated. Why is this Aunt Cheng so scary? Yingluo, are all wealthy ladies like her? He is very critical of us ordinary people." Xia Yingluo shrugged, "She's pretty good." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1428. Chapter 1428, No One Can Argue. Jin Linger was shocked. What? She's pretty good. Seeing her look, Xia Yingluo sighed softly and said, "Yeah. These big families fight to the death for power, and it's common for them to seek wealth and kill themselves. What they fear most is meeting someone with deep intentions. When the time comes, you don't even know how you died." The words made Jin Linger's back feel chilly. "No way, she will kill me." Xia Yingluo laughed out loud, "Look at how scared you are. That's why I say Aunt Cheng is good. Her scheming is not that deep. At best, she is just a sly person who came back to make trouble with you. If she has a plan to harm you, in my mind, I would never be so stern with you, welcome you in quietly, pretend to be a harmonious mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, and then secretly cause an accident to kill you without anyone noticing." Jin Linger trembled again. "It's too scary, this." Although Xia Yingluo's family is harmonious, she grew up in a wealthy family and has heard a lot of similar secrets. At this time, she comforted Jin Linger, "Although Aunt Cheng is a bit snobbish, she is cheerful. If I like you, I like you, and if I hate you, I hate you. Don't look at her clamoring for you and brother Du Zheng to separate, but as long as you let her accept it, she will defend you just like she defends brother Du Zheng." Jin Linger felt relieved and said, "Yingluo, thank you. Without you, I really don't know what I would do now, even if she likes Du Zheng so much. If it's because of her the reason caused Du Zheng to have conflicts with his family, which was still very difficult." Xia Yingluo comforted her a few more words, told her to have a good rest, and left the ward. Over there, Shen Yuqiang returned to Du's house and threw her bag on the sofa. "I'm really angry." The scene in the hospital just now still lingered in her mind, making her angrier and angrier as she thought about it. Why did that little Jin Linger take away her son's soul? This time, for Xia Yingluo's sake, I'll spare her a break, but I'll take good care of her next time. Outside the door, a servant came in and said, "Madam, Miss Gu Jingxiu is here to see you." "No," Shen Yuqian was still angry and said without thinking. As soon as he finished speaking, an elegant chuckle came from outside the door. "Aunt Cheng, what makes you so angry?" Following the voice, a young woman wearing an elegant embroidered dress calmly stepped into the living room and stood still, looking at the angry Shen Yuqian. When Shen Yuqian saw her, her face softened slightly, but she still gritted her teeth. "It's not because of my useless son. Jingxiu, why are you free to come here today? Sit down, Molly, why don't you go and pour Miss Gu tea?" The servant who came to report just now left quickly. The Du family is not only a family friend of the Li family, but also a family friend of the Gu family. The Li family has been abroad all year round. In contrast, the Du family and the Gu family move around more. Gu Jingxiu was very good at being a good person, especially her ability to pretend to be dignified and elegant in front of her elders, which won Shen Yuqian's favor. She would come over to talk to Shen Yuqian from time to time, but Shen Yuqian almost didn't regard her as her biological daughter. Hearing what Shen Yuqian said, Gu Jingxiu chuckled again, sat beside her naturally, and comforted, "Aunt Cheng, brother Du Zheng is so good, he is a rare talent of our generation, you are too demanding of him. If you are strict, then you will find fault with him everywhere. It's really not my fault this time. It's not good for you to tell me which girl he likes. Shen Yuqiang seemed to open up after being gently teased by Gu Jingxiu. The chatterbox kept complaining and told Gu Jingxiu everything about Jin Linger and Du Zheng. At the end, he said, I was scared to death when I heard the news about their marriage. Fortunately, I went to the hospital to confirm that it was fake news. Otherwise, no matter how big the matter was, I would have kicked that stinky girl out. Gu Jingxiu's eyes darkened slightly. Of course she has also heard about the recent news, and to some extent, she has even contributed to this situation. It's just that she originally wanted to harm Jin Linger, but she didn't expect that not only was he not killed, but it was a blessing in disguise that she and Du Zheng got close. Gu Jingxiu couldn't swallow this breath in her heart, and shared the same hatred with Shen Yuqiang. That girl is indeed a bitch. That's right, bitch. Broom Star, Shen Yuqiang seemed to have found a close friend, and cursed a few more words with Gu Jingxiu before sighing, what a pity, I don't know what attracted a Zheng to say to me. I won't marry her in this life. Gu Jingxiu was secretly shocked. She didn't expect that the situation had developed to this point. No, how can you let Jin Linger marry Du Zheng? Let's not talk about her personal likes and dislikes, just talk about her status. Jin Linger and Xia Yingluo are good friends. If Jin Linger marries into the Du family, won't the Du family be attracted to Xia Yingluo in the future? The Gu family has lost the support of the Li family, and Wei Lingnan has also been seduced by Xia Yingluo. If the Du family continues to be estranged from the Gu family, then the Gu family will really be helpless. She will never let this happen. Gu Jingxiu thought to herself and quickly came up with an idea, Aunt Chen, you are right. What is brother Du Zheng's status? How could he marry Jin Linger? Why don't you tell the media that their marriage was a fake one? If Jin Linger did anything to seduce Du Zheng, then the public opinion will naturally turn towards you. She is just a little star, how can she resist the overwhelming criticism? Shen Yuqiang's eyes lit up, yes, what you said makes sense, okay, let's do it. Jingxiu, it's a good thing that you are by my side to help me with ideas, otherwise I really wouldn't know what to do. Gu Jingxiu smiled slightly again, Aunt Chen, don't worry, I will definitely be on your side. Soon, new news came out in the media. According to the personal testimony of Du Zheng's mother Shen Yuqiang, it was confirmed that Du Zheng was not married to Jin Linger at all. The situation was critical at that time. As the president of Du's enterprise, in order to save the lives of his artists, Du Zheng pretended to be her husband and signed the hospital consent form out of humanitarian spirit. Unexpectedly, Jin Linger would pester Du Zheng after waking up, making mistakes and deliberately causing everyone's misunderstanding. It was really shameless. The public was in an uproar, looking at the heartbroken mother of Du Zheng in the news photos, and condemned Jin Linger as a scheming bitch. The place where Jin Linger is hospitalized is not a secret. These days, people throw garbage at the door of the ward from time to time. Even when Du Zheng pushes her for a walk in the garden every day, someone suddenly rushes out and calls her a bitch. Jin Linger couldn't bear to be disturbed. The outside world was full of negative news, and she really couldn't defend herself. Well, this is yesterday's second update. Last night, a group of relatives suddenly said that they went to the cemetery to see my deceased grandma. Yes, I went to the cemetery after dark at night, I came back late. There are 2 more updates today. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 1429. Chapter 1429. Wei Lingnan came in a hurry. Xia Yingluo also saw the news. Seeing her friend being unjustly accused and slandered in this way, she felt distressed and angry, so she went to visit her in the hospital again. Jin Linger didn't expect that she would come. She was sitting in a daze on the hospital bed. The faint skylight filtered in from the window, outlining her somewhat frail figure. Her legs were curled up on the hospital bed, her face buried in her knees, and she looked like a child. At every turn, Xia Yingluo walked to her bed and sat down, calling softly, "Ling-er." Jin Ling-er realized she was coming. She hurriedly wiped her eyes before raising her head and smiled reluctantly, "Yingluo." Xia Yingluo saw that her eye circles were a little red, and guessed that she had cried, so she comforted her softly, "I also saw the news, they are all nonsense, you are not that kind of person, I know it. Ling-er, no matter what happens I will stand by you no matter what." Jin Ling-er's mood was a little low, "I want to be with Du Zheng, am I too wishful thinking?" Xia Yingluo said, "I ask you to give up now, are you willing to do so?" Jin Ling-er stopped talking and was in a daze for a while before saying blankly, "What should I do?" "Yingluo." Before Xia Yingluo could answer, the door to the ward opened and Du Zheng walked in. The two girls turned their heads together and saw that he was holding a bouquet of flowers for visiting the patient. The red roses were in full bloom and were so beautiful. "Brother Du Zheng." Xia Yingluo stood up first and called out. Du Zheng nodded and glanced at Jin Ling-er, "Are you feeling better?" Jin Ling-er was silent for a moment and nodded. Du Zheng took a few steps forward, looked at her carefully, and frowned slightly, "Why do you still look so weak?" He put the flowers on the table next to the hospital bed, turned his head slightly, and said to Xia Yingluo, "Yingluo, follow, I'll come out and tell you something." Xia Yingluo nodded, "Okay." The two of them walked to the corridor outside the hospital ward. Du Zheng lowered his head and said to Xia Yingluo, "I want to ask you something." Xia Yingluo smiled, as if she was a little surprised, but also expected, "Request?" "Brother Du Zheng, you have never asked me for anything in all these years. Let me think about it, I have known you for so many years, ever since you were little, you have never asked anyone for anything." She raised her face and looked at him slyly. Du Zheng's originally stern face softened a little and said, "I would like to ask you to accept Ling-er as your sister. It is best to give her an identity in the Li family, so that my family will not embarrass her these days." His mother cried, made trouble, and hanged herself at home, insisting that he and Jin Ling-er should be separated at all costs. The reason was simply that she felt that Jin Ling-er had no status, and marrying her would not bring any help to Du Zheng, but would only make her laugh. But it would be different if Jin Ling-er was Xia Yingluo's younger sister. Even if she was not her biological daughter, but just a god sister, she could still walk around in the upper-class society, and no one would say anything that was not enough for her status. Hearing this, Xia Yingluo smiled again, "Sure enough, Ling-er saw you right." Actually, she had thought of this idea a long time ago. If she could recognize Jin Ling-er as her sister, it would be done once and for all. But she kept silent because she wanted Du Zheng to bring it up. He was the one who wanted to spend the rest of his life with Jin Ling-er. If he brought up the matter, they would probably be more affectionate in the future. Du Zheng suppressed his nervousness and asked her, "Did you agree?" Unexpectedly, Xia Yingluo shook her head. Du Zheng frowned, "Yingluo." Xia Yingluo laughed suddenly, "I mean, why not let my parents recognize her as their goddaughter, so that she is a legitimate young lady of the Li family? Wouldn't it be better than me randomly recognizing her as a younger sister?" Du Zheng's brows widened, "You are still thoughtful." The two of them had decided on the plan. Xia Yingluo went home and told Li Lei and Xiaoling about the matter. These parents had always doted on her. This method of indirectly marrying the Du family was not bad, so I readily agreed. Xiaoling said, "When Jin Ling-er recovers from her illness, we will hold a press conference to officially announce this matter." Xia Yingluo hugged her neck and said affectionately, "I just know that my mother will be fine." However, before Jin Ling-er recovered from her illness, the next day she received news from someone sent by Du Zheng. Jin Ling-er had been poisoned by black powder, misused fatal drugs, and was in critical condition again in the hospital. The situation is even more dangerous than last time. Xia Yingluo turned pale, put down the phone and rushed out, heading straight to the hospital ward. In the ward, Jin Ling'er was indeed dying, and a large circle of doctors surrounded the bed, all of whom were helpless. "Get ready for the funeral," the attending doctor shook his head and sighed, and said to them, "The injuries are getting worse. Even the reincarnation of the gods cannot save him this time." "Doctor." Du Zheng wanted to say something else. The doctor stopped him. "Mr. Du, I know you are powerful, but Miss Jin's condition is really beyond our capabilities. No matter whether you use coercion or inducement, there is nothing you can do." Xia Yingluo didn't have time to listen to their involvement, so she directly said to the attending doctor, "Take your people out, right away." The attending doctor didn't understand what she meant, so Xia Yingluo said impatiently, "Quick. I will be responsible for any problems that arise, or believe it or not, I will make you all lose your jobs." After being threatened by her, several doctors finally went out. Xia Yingluo said to Du Zheng, "Brother Du Zheng, please go out too." "What do you want to do?" Du Zheng asked her. "It's too late to explain," Xia Yingluo said hurriedly, "hurry up, I want to save Ling'er's life. If you don't get out, it will be too late." Du Zheng took a deep look at her and walked out without hesitation, closing the ward door for her. She was the only one left in the ward, and Jin Ling'er was lying on the bed dying. Xia Yingluo leaned over to check on Jin Ling'er, and saw that she was too poisoned. Her lips had turned black, her face was frighteningly blue, and she had more air coming out than in. She didn't dare to delay, raised her wrist, opened her mouth and bit into her veins. "Yingluo," suddenly, a voice stopped her. Xia Yingluo turned her head and saw a handsome man appearing in the ward, followed by a somewhat embarrassed-looking woman. It was Wei Lingnan and Gu Jingxiu. She glanced at the two of them, but had no time to pay attention to them. She opened her mouth and bit her wrist again. Wei Lingnan held her hand. "Don't do this. Let Gu Jingxiu come." Xia Yingluo then looked at him seriously. "What are you doing?" "Your energy is precious," Wei Lingnan said. "Tan Ying told me that something happened again at Jin Ling'er, so I brought Gu Jingxiu to deal with the emergency. The last bottle of the all-purpose potion is gone." He knew that Xia Yingluo and Jin Ling'er had a good relationship, so he hurried over because he was afraid that Xia Yingluo would risk his life to save her. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1430. Chapter 1430, Shock in the Ward. Xia Yingluo was reluctant to waste Wei Lingnan's energy, but Gu Jingxiu was still willing, so she nodded. She turned to Gu Jingxiu and said, "Hurry up, activate the energy to feed Ling'er to drink, and don't stop until her vital signs are stable. She is the queen, and she has the power to order any clan member at will, which is irresistible." Gu Jingxiu's face was pale. There was nothing more humiliating than being treated like this by her beloved man and love rival, but she knew deeply that she had no room to refuse. Her life was picked up. Wei Lingnan had had murderous intentions towards her a long time ago. If she hadn't begged Xia Yingluo, it would have been impossible for her to survive until now. No matter what, Xia Yingluo cannot be angered. She bit her lip, stepped forward, cut her own hand open, and fed the unconscious Jin Ling'er blood. Jin Ling'er's face was green and black, and her lips were so stiff that she couldn't move them at all. Gu Jingxiu spent a lot of effort to pry open her mouth, and watched his own blood flow down Jin Ling'er's throat to her stomach. There was a trace of resentment in his eyes. "She is so hateful, so hateful. Why didn't this Jin Ling'er die directly in the car accident? Why couldn't the poison he carefully prepared later still fail to kill her? Why is this woman so lucky?" Yes, Jin Ling'er's poisoning was not an accident. It was Gu Jingxiu who instigated Shen Yuqian to incite public opinion and pretended to be a black powder to poison Jin Ling'er's infusion. She thought it was done perfectly and the dose used was enough to poison Jin Ling on the spot, but she didn't expect that this woman still survived. Is this so possible? The last car accident was aimed at killing her, and so was the poisoning this time. If once was an accident, twice was too strange. While he was deep in thought, he saw Xia Yingluo on the side gently holding Jin Linger's cold hand and murmuring, "Linger, you must hold on. Mom said that I am the daughter of the Phoenix, and I can give everything to those around me bringing good luck. Now I want you to be safe, you hear me?" Gu Jingxiu's heart tightened, and then she realized that she had made countless calculations, but she actually missed a little bit. The woman in front of me named Xia Yingluo is not only the queen of Scatana, but also a member of the guardian family of this planet, the daughter of the Phoenix. She is blessed, and she also has certain abilities to protect and bless those around her. Important person. Just a little bit. Just a little bit worse. Gu Jingxiu felt extremely regretful. She should not have calculated the dosage of Jin Linger based on the normal dosage. If she had taken several times more medicine, Jin Linger would have died long ago. But who told her to be too careful? Afraid of being discovered, he only used a dose that would kill an ordinary person, allowing Jin Linger to escape. Gu Jingxiu's face was gloomy, and her wrist unconsciously raised a few points, leaving Jin Linger's mouth. Blood spilled out and fell wastefully on the white mattress. Although Xia Yingluo was talking to Jin Linger, she was also watching Gu Jingxiu's every move. As soon as Xia Yingluo saw her hand leave, she grabbed it and pressed it back tightly. She pressed so hard that Gu Jingxiu screamed in pain. She didn't know whether it was the scream or Xia Yingluo's movements that stimulated the unconscious Jin Linger. Jin Linger's jaw tightened slightly and she actually bit it. He grabbed Gu Jingxiu's wrist and stuck her injured area deeply into his mouth. Gu Jingxiu's face changed drastically, and she felt that the energy in her body suddenly flowed out uncontrollably. Jin Linger's mouth was like a bottomless pit, sucking impatiently, instinctively reaching for the place where the life energy was surging. "Ah!" Gu Jingxiu cried out in pain, trying to pull out her hand, but couldn't. The blood and energy flew away faster and faster, and her face turned pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. The black hair on his head also turned white little by little. "Help! Help!" Gu Jingxiu was horrified and weakly called for help. There is not a drop of daily energy left in her body. What is being absorbed at this time is the energy of the source of life. If this continues, she has no doubt that she will be sucked to death. But Jin Linger bit her with such force that she, who was weak, could not break away at all. "Help me, please save me." Gu Jingxiu was really scared, and she couldn't help but beg in a trembling voice. Wei Lingnan just stood aside and looked at her coldly. He didn't care about this woman's life or death. Since Aluo wanted to keep Jin Linger safe, it wasn't a big deal to sacrifice Gu Jingxiu. Besides, just as Gu Jingxiu guessed, his murderous intention towards her has never dissipated. Anyone who offends Aluo must die with him. Aluo wouldn't let him kill Gu Jingxiu, but if Gu Jingxiu died because Jin Linger sucked all his energy away, even Aluo wouldn't be able to say anything. Wei Lingnan, who had such a wishful thinking, even smiled when facing Gu Jingxiu's look of help. Gu Jingxiu was so frightened by his smile that a surge of heat suddenly surged out of her lower body, followed by a foul smell, which turned out to be incontinence. Xia Yingluo's eyebrows suddenly furrowed, and she reached out her hand impatiently and pushed her away. Gu Jingxiu was like a piece of rag that was thrown far away and fell lifelessly in the corner of the ward. "It stinks," Xia Yingluo said. "Wei Lingnan, please clean it up." Wei Lingnan's eyes flashed. "Aluo, I can kill the woman who offended you." Gu Jingxiu, who had just escaped, trembled when he heard this and almost cried again. He hissed, "Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I'll wipe it. I'll wipe it myself. Please don't kill me." Xia Yingluo covered her nose with one hand, suppressed her anger and said to Wei Lingnan, Why are you still dawdling? Wipe it quickly. Wei Lingnan glanced at Gu Jingxia gloomily and reluctantly went to the bathroom to find a mop. Xia Yingluo snorted, this man is really thinking about killing. Even if she is reincarnated and the people on earth become soft-hearted, no matter what, Queen Aluo, who was once decisive in killing and could continue to kill without blinking in the face of mountains of corpses and seas of blood, has disappeared and been replaced by a compassionate woman. A good citizen with a heart, he never takes human life lightly, even when he treats his love rival. Just now, even if Gu Jingxia was not frightened into incontinence, she originally planned to push her away. Wei Lingnan brought the mop and bent down to clean up the pool of dirty, yellow, and smelly liquid. Xia Yingluo turned her head to check Jin Linger's condition. After replenishing the energy of the Scatana star, her breathing had gradually stabilized. The black and blue on her face had receded a lot, and she was no longer seriously injured. She breathed a long sigh of relief, and as soon as she relaxed, she felt the stench of the urine stains on the ground was even more overwhelming. She left the hospital bed in disgust and stood in the farthest corner, and said to Wei Lingnan dissatisfiedly, "Can't you move faster?" End of this chapter.